Right guys, there's a couple of angles I want to look at this video from, because yes, it's good that Esther McVeigh is finally calling it out in Parliament, but it must be said she's very late to the party on it. She also skirts around elephants in the room, but then you have to expect that from politicians, don't ya? They never tell you the full truth, and in fact often tell you nothing but lies, so this is better than the usual silence. The minister responding to her question no is a completely different kettle of fish, and shows why people say the last honest man to enter Parliament was Guy Fawkes. She is actually the reason this video must be made, because her response is beyond laughable, in fact it's bloody insulting.
Mr. Speaker, the Chief Medical Officer recently warned that current non-COVID excess deaths is being driven in part by patients not getting statins or blood pressure medicines during the pandemic. But when looking at the data on statins in openprescribing.net, which is based on monthly NHS prescribing, there appears not to be a drop. So where is the evidence? And if there isn't one, what is causing these excess deaths? Will the Minister commit to an urgent and thorough investigation on the matter?
Well, we are seeing an increase in excess deaths in this country, but we're also seeing that in Wales, in Scotland, in Northern Ireland and across Europe. And there are a range of factors. There is an increase, as we saw in December, in the number of people being admitted with flu, with COVID and with other healthcare conditions. And this is not something that's just seen in this country, but across Europe as well.
Now yeah, Esther McVeigh is late to the party and right in some of what she says while missing elephants in the room, as I said, but the minister's response is bloody incredible. This trout literally stood there and said that because it's happening in other countries at the same time, we don't need to bother looking into it.
And it's no good to say that, well, every other jurisdiction in the world is following basically the same policy. That would strike me as herd stupidity.
People are dying in droves and the government is now telling you, don't worry about it, this shit happens. This is made even funnier when you think back to 2 years ago and how desperate they was to save us from a virus at all costs, yet now they couldn't give a flying fuck that 3,000 more people are dying each week than bloody should be. In fact, 3,000 extra deaths a week might make that a higher mortality rate than during the pandemic they claim to be saving us from. Someone make that make sense if it is the bloody case. But the fact that the minister brushed it off like that tells me they've obviously got something to hide. Well, I thought that anyway, but it just adds to that feeling, because if they didn't, they'd be looking into this right away. Oh, and another thing that comes from this little clip is the fact that Chris Whitty has been called out as a liar for saying that statins, or the lack of them, is to blame for these excess deaths. You heard Esther McVeigh point out that fact early on, which to me means he must have knowingly lied when making that claim to excuse these excess deaths. Now, some might say he should be punished for lying, but to be honest, I expect he'll be promoted. The same is probably true for the minister standing there, giving the most laughable excuse possible for not looking into excess deaths. Well done though to Esther McVeigh for calling it out, even if you are late to the party like I've said. Late is always better than bloody never.